Hi, and welcome to the quarterly video update from NVCA. I'm joined here with Jeff Farrah, our General Counsel, and what we wanted to do is talk about an important issue that has really consumed us over the last couple of years. It's the issue around foreign investment. And this is a result of a bill that passed a couple of years ago called the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act, which essentially put CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., on steroids. So Jeff, talk to us about kind of where we are in this process.
Sure, Bobby. And so as you said, FIRRMA passed in August of 2018, and one of the things that Congress did was it gave the administration the authority to put elements of the legislation in place on a pilot basis. And so we have been living under this pilot program as a venture industry since November of last year. And the next phase in the process is that Treasury needed to propose final rules. And so what we saw in late September was the Treasury Department come out with a set of proposed rules that are ultimately going to replace the pilot rules. They will need to be finalized according to statute by February of 2020. And so NVCA just had an opportunity to comment on those rules. And if you want to take a look at the 11 issues that we commented on, they are up on our website. But broadly speaking, we think of things on the fund side and how it impacts those of you that manage venture capital funds, but also on the direct investment side, because we know that co-investments have been a big issue that have really been had lately.
So that's the comments at the Department of Treasury, but we know that there's also a proceeding at the Department of Commerce per the legislation. Can you speak to that?
Sure, and so the way this interacts is that under CFIUS, for the investment to be picked up by CFIUS, it needs to be into a so-called critical technology company. And right now that is fairly limited to companies that are currently covered under export controls law. But what the statute told the Commerce Department to do was to define so-called emerging and foundational technologies that are not currently covered by export controls laws, and then to apply that regulatory structure on them. And so what the Commerce Department did was it came out with a list of 14 categories of general technology that it was interested in getting feedback on. Those include things that are really in the venture wheelhouse, like artificial intelligence and robotics and biotechnology and 3D printing. And so what we expect is for the Commerce Department to come out with its initial tranche of emerging technologies. And we think this is going to be a lot narrower than the 14 technologies that were mentioned, but certainly things that will get the venture capital industry's attention. And that's important because whatever is ultimately covered by that rulemaking is now subject to a CFIUS process if other requirements are met. It also means that those technologies will be covered by export control law for the first time. And this could require your portfolio companies to need to apply to the government for an export license to send a product overseas. It also could really be a big deal for portfolio companies of yours that have foreign nationals working on that technology because of something called deemed exports, where even if the technology never leaves the United States, if you have a foreign national working on an export-controlled item, it is deemed to be an export to that person's country of nationality. So very, very big implications across the board.
We have enough issues on immigration. Here's yet another one. So we had a conference last week, the Emerging Technology Meets National Security, the second one we've held. Can you talk a little bit about why we did this? You've talked about filing the comments, which is a very official process. Talk a little bit about the conference and what we were trying to accomplish.
Sure, and so the issue here is that over the years, NVCA has spent a lot of time talking to policymakers on things like immigration and tax policy and financial services policy, and that work continues. But as foreign investment scrutiny has really picked up, and as the government has become a lot more interested in next generation technology, we have realized that there's a whole other group of policymakers that we really need to speak with and interface with, and those are people in the national security space. And so the Emerging Technology Meets National Security Conference is really an opportunity to bring the sides together, to have a dialogue, to make sure that policymakers understand the venture capital model, the startup ecosystem. And this conference was unbelievable last week. It really brought together some incredible people from all sides. Effectively the head of CFIUS, Tom Fado, did a fireside chat We had Don Meyrick's from the CIA, who did a fireside chat with one of our board members, George Hoyam at Incutel, talking about what the relationship is between Incutel and the CIA in terms of getting access to technology. And then we had the head of the National Security Division from the Department of Justice. It was really an amazing opportunity to really kind of take a step forward in a lot of our efforts to make sure that our industry is very well understood as these important decisions are being made.
And having played the MC role there, one of the takeaways I had, which is another reminder, not that we need any, of how misunderstood our industry is and how many times people conflate. And frankly, that's why this issue is so difficult for us. They're used to in a CFIUS process dealing with somebody buying an entire company. And this whole model of making kind of minority investments in a syndicate with other investors really compounds the challenge of them not understanding our issue when this issue happens.
You're absolutely right, and many venture capital firms have, at least before November of 2018, never really considered what CFIUS thought about something or whether or not the committee had jurisdiction. But this expansion into non-controlling investments has really made CFIUS the new cop on the venture beat, and it's something that we really need to make sure that they understand the speed with which you all operate and how it is that it's different when you have a situation where an investor might be doing a non-controlling investment versus buying the entirety of a company. And so that process is ongoing.
So you talked about where we are in the process. You talked about what we did last week and how that helps bolster the official comments that we make in our advocacy here in Washington. Just talk about what's next. Like, what are we waiting on? What are the times?
NVCA filed their comments, as we discussed, in the Treasury proceeding, and those final rules need to be in effect by February 2020. Our assumption is that the Treasury Department is currently going through the various comments that were made, and we identified 11 issues that we would like to see resolved. And so we will continue to interface with the Treasury Department and the various other CFIUS agencies until those rules are finalized. In terms of the Commerce Department side of the house, this is something where it's not on exactly the same timeline, but we do anticipate that in the relatively near future, you will see the Commerce Department come out with its first tranche of so-called emerging technologies, and we'll be watching very closely to make sure that those are first of all specific enough where your portfolio companies can understand what the government is asking them to do and not to do. And then also making sure that they aren't spread out so wide that a lot of investments are being picked up into companies that really don't pose a national security consideration.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. You've done an amazing job carrying the industry through this important and complicated issue. I'd like to make a shout out for the Series DC newsletter. NVCA sends out to our members every Friday a newsletter that talks about the policy issues that are important to the ecosystem. So every week you can get an update on exactly what we're doing with regard to this issue of foreign investment or tax or immigration or the many issues that we work on. So please take a look at that, and if you have any more questions, look at our website or give us a call. Thanks so much for joining us.